until Mike gets up.
I am. Yeah. I'm a Maine girl dad. I got granddaughters, daughters.
I've got granddaughters and daughters too. But mine don't live in Maine. They live in southern Maine called California.
Yeah. Maine-California.
Californication.
Did you do away with all your old representative pins?
No.
Is this one an old one or a new one? I'm wearing?
It's a new one. You have a new one.
Is it a
Big
fat one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, where's your name tag? Put it on if you're going to be on TV.
Oh, they know who I am. Do you know who I am?
I know.
Why? You can wear my name tag if you want.
You know, it's funny because I just got this jacket and I look at some of my other jackets and what I did was I put pins in them and some of them snag when they get taken out because I leave the pockets sewn shut, so I don't like to use those ones. And the magnetic ones are always getting twisted, so I don't like those ones. So I had the ones done with the pins glued
What's
on
this
it.
one? The State of Maine one?
Yeah, I get a lot of compliments on that
That's a nice one.
versus the circular one. But the only problem is it goes crooked.
Yes,
on me.
straighten it out. All right, let's go. So you see that old fellow that comes and visits me?
He used to come all the time back in the day. When I worked in the Senate, he used to come all the time. He was just like a little wacky in there. But Tim Walton used to live in
Sorry about that. Maybe shaking the a little bit.
like come to the state house and be like walk in or right by the state house and he's like, hey. He's been around. I haven't seen him in a long time, so he's been around for a while, but he kind of like makes his way back into.
What time do you think this press conference is at, Joe?
Do you know?
No, I know what he thinks. I'm just wondering how long I'm going to stick around.
The hope I would imagine is before committees.
If they said 12:30,
No, it should be any minute.
Senator's finished.
Yeah, they were going to come down here in a minute or two.
What teams you want? I changed the name of it.
So we're just waiting on them to make their way down. Probably a week before and the week after. And then we're probably not gonna do like the actual honeymoon until probably something different. But
you know, then he'll be jailed. It's just lost him.
yeah, well, the plan was to go to Rome. Part of it is like they were talking about getting a papal audience, but the problem is his health is not good. So like, yeah, basically, so we have to we're kind of in limbo until they figure that part out.
Marty, can you come to
Of
Senate?
course, I'm just looking around. Yep.
So we're working on it. Just down in Connecticut with her over the weekend. For the she was getting her fitting, and then I was grabbing shirts and ties to match the ladies. So I assumed that all the men wore one color, and then the people at the wedding place were like, no, you have to match the bride. They're like, you're marrying the bride, not the bridesmaid. I thought of it that way. Yeah, I didn't realize I had to have a different color than the rest of them. So even smaller, but
I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, everything's way more expensive. Yeah, so like, luckily our venue for our reception, most everyone is like thousands. This one is Sheila's brother. He's giving us a really good deal, so because it's not normally a wedding venue, that's why. This Saturday we're meeting up with our yeah, so
And you can video. I don't even know
so I don't know if we're like videoing. I think we're gonna do like a video from the church. You can use the church's video. I think the rest is just gonna be photos. I don't know entirely, but I think it's just mostly leadership and then maybe one or two folks.
So Billy, Bob, and Trey?
Yeah, I think it's leaders, essentially assistant leaders too, and then the other folks that kind of
She's taking
builds or matters with it.
I had nothing to do with it. Well, I do. You know, I had somebody write to me who said, "Who's the teacher of the year?" And
Well, if you have to do what you have to do, I think they should use 1211. She should be down for. Sounds good.
you know, it's not even, somebody said to me,
Anne Frederick. So when you turned out, she got
She's in her second.
she's in her second.
let's do it.
A lot of house people, I would say.
Yeah, that was a Sanford.
Good.
We had two of the Sanford.
That's the good.
It's not because you say it's
She's got the southern part.
John Tuttle was actually good for us in Sanford. That's a moderate. Hey.
What are you doing? Sitting in here with all your friends?
Yeah, I'm sitting right here with all my friends. No, he's got it. I'm not just shooting my mic.
transmission. Oh my God, there was a lot of skinny jeans killing somebody's dog. So I ended up, I wanted it down so much. I just said, look, just I'm gonna put it on the house or so they're like, they get full credit for what they come in. They get, yeah, but won't that make the film on it? Oh, well, supply part, right? That's something. You take a suit to wear to get something. A shirt. Just to take the shirt. He does a lot. Realize that? 4 shirts. Yeah. 4 shirts. Sorry, they gave him a $20 bill. Exactly right. Right on the $20. Have you noticed only 4 shirts? What's that? There's everything has 450. I have a new phone.
706. Rick just texted down here.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Tell them you don't open it.
That's like 15-minute segment. Okay, that's a 15-minute segment.
Sometimes I do break, like,
You know,
706.
you go to 18,
Yeah, but he'll take some.
yeah.
He'll take some cuts in there.
If there's something that you specifically want to talk about, send in a question.
He's pretty good.
Right, but if
He'll chat. No, nobody ever thinks it's all about.
How you doing, buddy? That's right. It's almost time. It's all about almost time to get the phones out.
Oh, yeah. I take mine out of storage probably in 2 weeks.
They put the dogs in.
Yeah.
Richardson.
That's the price. I'm gonna go find out where the hell it's going.
The chair of tax. Mike Tippett. She has all this.
Oh,
5-second word. And she's got another year. 5-second word.
Yeah, we talked about
Oh yeah, she did a great job.
Anybody care about beef?
You did a great job. I did not listen to what you did a great job. I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
Lucky for you.
Is that because I tried to impeach her twice? Or was it the ethics club? It could have been. Was it the joint? What might have been? Do you still get Christmas tree? We're not friends. No? What are you doing now that I got proposed? Where are you from? No, it would be like this. So what are you doing now? Where are you from? Oh, okay. You go right through there, I think. We're going away this year. We want to come. And we get to pay the camper tax. And the tax is pretty cool.
So I'm more here, what you just said, but if you want to bring signature, I'll let me know. I trust you on that stuff too, because I.
Well, it's in, I mean, I've already working with them.
So, yeah.
Are you being received like your constituents or the golf cart?
Yeah, which one? Jim.
I'm with them. You are too.
Your bait fish? My bait fish dealers?
Yeah.
It's in the department.
See, that's what I just read to her too.
It's crazy because they've already paid for them and they've already paid the tax on them.
Right. Yeah.
And they can't get credit for another year and a half. And then they have to keep track of how much they collect because that's all they can get back.
How you doing?
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
Not bad. It's new.
This is coming to you.
One of the Sonic
It's
games.
about bait fishing.
What is it?
Darren would like to change.
Oh my God, no.
Come on, come on. Just look at it.
All right, I will. Hey, I wanted to see Jesse yesterday, and he didn't show up on time, so I had to leave. I want him to,
Commercial fishing when I can.
we've got a new thing with the Harbor Business Association.
Yeah.
That instead of $1,000 for the prime sponsor of our golf tournament,
Yeah.
1,500, you know, on all of our literature, all of our signage, your logos on everything. Harbor Business Association.
ABA.
So I left it alone.
I thought those were
Because they meet on Thursday.
already. So, I'm sorry.
I'm trying not to bug him, but I think he's gonna be good. He's always been good with us.
Hey, John. How are you? Good, how are you?
All right. You want me to do it right?
Hey, Aaron, is this ours?
Yeah, on the left there. Yeah.
On the left or the right? This one?
Well, my left, your right.
All right, does everybody have a sound check? Yep. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to today's press briefing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to today's press briefing at the Maine State House. We are so glad you are here. Everyone good? All right.
Yeah, this whole weekend pretty good.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You're fine with me.
Oh. He does the same thing to me. He's like, yeah, but their sound system.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Hello, Mr. Underwood. How are you, sir?
Good.
I'm as good as a bowl of spaghetti. Wiggly, can't sit still. Kind of like Jello.
Hey, tall guy, yeah, you're fine with me.
Me
He's not getting the back.
Well, this may have to go off. It's this mic. No, it's low battery.
Right.
Hey, how are you? There.
I'm Billy Bob.
Everybody ready? Welcome to today's legislative press conference. We are here today to talk about issues surrounding Title IX. The Department of Justice has recently given Maine another 10 days to comply with the rules that enforce Title IX in defending girls in sports and private spaces. Right now, we are in a hostage situation. The governor and her administration is holding Maine schools and Maine education under hostage. And this standoff is not going to end well for the state of Maine and its education funding. We came here today to essentially call on the governor to stop this misguided battle against the federal government, to uphold Title IX, and to comply with the orders coming down from the executive branch. That's pretty much about what we're here today for, and I'm going to just kick it right over to Assistant Leader Katrina Smith.
Hi, thank you all for being here today. I think we realized that Maine is in trouble with the federal government. I think it goes much further just over the past week than you would have thought. Of course, we started with the investigation by the Offices of Civil Rights, and that was regarding about $187,000 worth of funds to the state of Maine through DHS. And we were found in violation because of Greeley High School and the Maine Principals Association, who absolutely refused to comply with the Office of Civil Rights and walk back some of their actions with boys and girls sports. But then just after that, we had the U.S. Department of Education find that Maine was in violation of Title IX, and that's not just $187,000, that's $250 million that are being looked at withdrawing from the state. The Department of Education asked the state of Maine to apologize to our girls, to give them back the medals that they rightfully deserve. And again, they have not been responded to by the Maine Principals Association, by our governor, by really anybody on the Democrat side. They are avoiding this issue. But then we find ourselves facing a problem from the U.S. Department of Education when we had Secretary McMahon just this last Friday come and say that they find that Maine is in violation of the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. What that means is what they have done over the last 3 to 4 years here in Maine in the privacy that they've allotted their counselors and their superintendents in regards to our children is going to be looked at. Amber Levine, the case where a counselor gave a chest binder to her child and never was told, that's in violation of FERPA. And so we have these 3 areas that the federal government is really looking at Maine, and we say that the Democrats have to come out and fight this. We have bill after bill addressing this, and we'll talk about this a little later, one that's coming out just today. We have sports bills, we have bathroom bills. We need to make a legislative solution to this problem. As of right now, these hearings have not even been scheduled. So we're calling on the Democrats today to step up to this plate. 64% of Mainers in a poll recently by UNH say that they do not believe that biological boys belong in girls' sports. So we need to start listening to Mainers and acting on it. Let's get this into committee. Let's have these conversations. Let's solve this problem. Let's save the state of Maine from losing the funding that we desperately, even in these times especially, desperately need. So we're just calling on them to get moving. The Republicans are ready to do the work. The Senate Leader, Trey?
I'll just defer and be available for questions at the end here. So in the interest of time.
For you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Poirier. I represent House District 70, which is Skowhegan. I just wanted to touch briefly on the FERPA announcement that came last week that Representative Smith was just speaking about. I've had an opportunity to speak to a lot of school teachers recently, and it's very clear that every school teacher in Maine is given education about FERPA laws. Whether or not the district fully complies with those FERPA laws is something of great concern. There's documented evidence, including the case with Amber Levine, that FERPA laws are indeed being violated in Maine. And I think we owe that to the Mills administration and also the radical left policies that we've seen happen in recent years. So we're calling on the governor, we're calling on our legislative colleagues on the other side of the aisle to make changes in these policies so that parent rights are recognized as fundamental. I myself have put in a couple of bills in the last couple of sessions, and they've been shot down by my Democrat colleagues. It's important to note that parents are their child's #1 advocate. They do need to know what's happening in schools for medical reasons, for the best of their child mental health. That's just super important for parents to be able to bring up children the way they see fit. The Democrats right now are putting a roadblock between parents and their kids, and it's all a political agenda, and we're calling on the governor and the Democrats to step up and do the right thing, follow federal law, which does supersede any state laws, and make that happen.
Representative Sobolewski.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For nearly 2 years, we've been fighting for parental and student rights. School administrators, school boards, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and the current executive administration claim repeatedly claim they cannot act to remove boys from girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, or showers, or prevent them from competing in girls' sports because the term gender identity is in the Maine Human Rights Act. Our Chief Executive Officer, Governor Mills, has gone to the extent of picking a fight with President Trump over the issue, a fight all Mainers will pay a debt for. Governor Mills has stated that she would like to see the issue acted on by the state legislature. Today, I submitted a bill, a signed bill, an act to remove consideration of gender identity from the Maine Human Rights Act. Governor Mills, this is what you asked for. Please support this important legislation and circle your party behind its passage. Additionally, to President Trump, sir, please, President Trump, please use your authority and influence to call for a halt to any further actions against our great state until our legislature completes its work and passes this important piece of legislation. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take questions now.
I've heard a couple things that they sound like they contradict. Do you guys agree that the state law does need to be changed in order for the policy on transgender athletes to be changed? Or do you feel like Mills could do it right now if she wants without changing the state law? I've heard suggestions that it does need to be changed, and I've heard suggestions that it doesn't because it supersedes.
We're suggesting both, and they don't contradict. Federal law supersedes state law, so the state should immediately act and protect girls' sports and girls' spaces. But we should also change the laws that are incorrect in the state in doing so.
Yeah, and I'd also, I'd echo that. I don't think that there's a legitimate argument that says that we can't say that girls' sports are for girls, which anything beyond that, in my opinion, would be a violation of that law, because that same law, and I think it was Representative Smith who I think put it pretty eloquently on the radio a week or two ago, that law doesn't just apply to gender identity. That is one thing it applies to, but it also applies to sex. And we haven't changed the definition of sex in the state of Maine. We've just added other things to it that, you know, my Democrat colleagues felt needed to be added. However, that doesn't make that other language in that same statute any less valuable or any less impactful as it relates to that. So I don't think that we need to change the law in Maine in order for us to be in compliance with what the executive order is and what the federal government is now requiring us to do as a state. However, I do think there is strong value in cleaning up this mess of a statute that we have created here, kind of under a false guise and a false pretense, because the only thing that we are doing, it come to find out, is hurting girls and women. That's all. So I think it is incumbent upon us to get this statute right this session, but also I don't think that there's anything that we couldn't do right now that wouldn't address the problem with federal funding still being able to flow into the state of Maine.
You're submitting legislation to try to change some of these laws. President Trump he's done executive orders. Do you feel like that's the law of the land, or should he be following the federal?
Well, I believe that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to remember when Obama decided that he was going to run the country by executive edict. That's the game that the Democrats have decided that they were going to open that can of worms, and things were continually upheld by the courts, and so therefore here we are. Is it the best way to govern? No. But do I have a lot of faith in my Democratic colleagues that they're going to do the right thing and listen to the obvious mandate that came from across the country in this last election cycle? Also no. So I think we're in this spot now where we know that we can, because the Democrats have proven just as much that operating in this manner is unfortunately the new normal. And frankly, you know, Republicans, when we take back control in the state of Maine too, we're going to have to operate in a similar fashion here. And if that's what it takes to get the job done on behalf of Maine people, then that's what we'll happily do. But it's clear that the Democrats, both in Maine and D.C., are only interested in one thing, and that's obstructing the president and anything that he's trying to accomplish on behalf of the people that put him there. And it's really unfortunate. It's a really missed opportunity. It's crazy to me that things and issues like boys playing in girls' sports is apparently the hill that my Democrat colleagues are going to die on. But alas, here we are.
Just for clarity, are we announcing state legislation that would change the Maine Human Rights Act or amend any of these laws?
Yes, I believe Representative Sobolewski just outlined a bill that he's got. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Okay, and is that the biggest issue? If you can step up to the podium so I have the audiences.
Excuse me.
Is that the biggest issue, right? If we change the Maine Human Rights Act, then gender identity is no longer protected.
That, every time that I've had a discussion with either, as I said before, a school board or anybody that's in authority, it goes back to the Maine Human Rights Act. Every piece of legislation that we brought forward, the argument's always the Maine Human Rights Act. So taking the term gender identity out of the Maine Human Rights Act puts an end to it all. Now that was passed, I believe, that was put in there for adults. It was, nobody cares what an adult does. It's your right. If you want to pretend you're a girl, pretend you're a boy, that's your right, go ahead. But unfortunately, it's being used now as a weapon, if you want to call it so, by predators against our children. They're saying we can force boys into girls' showers because it's in the Maine Human Rights Act. We don't care what happens to these girls on a sports track or out in competing in sports. The Maine Human Rights says that boy can do it. We need to remove that. Now you got to remember too, that having that in the Maine Human Rights Act, even though it might protect the Civil and Human Rights Act of just a very small fraction of our population, it actually tramples on the civil and human rights of the 99.9% of us by forcing us to bend a knee at an altar at a woke fantasy. So it needs to change.
Have you heard any anecdotes from folks that's happening, that young men are being
I just want to add to that real quick.
Sorry.
The problem is that the term gender identity in the Human Rights Act is being interpreted way too broadly by the left. And what it's saying is there's no boundary between men's and women's spaces. Now, that's a poor interpretation of that, but if that's the cause of it, that's why Representative Sobolewski is advocating for removing that out, because there's nothing else in the Human Rights Act that causes any problems like this. And it's that broad interpretation, and I think we all know that you don't need to interpret it that broadly. That's why, we're saying that, yes, we can make the changes without a change in law, but also there are laws that we should change in addition to that, just to clear it up. Back to your question. There are things that we just know to be true here. If a transgender, a transgender woman who is a man who transitioned to a female goes to the doctors and asks to have their tubes tied, and the doctor refuses to do that procedure, that's not discrimination. That's not discrimination. That's just a matter of fact. And the same thing applies to sports in Title IX, that these people that are transitioned from male to female, they don't qualify. They don't meet the qualifications of female sports. That's what we're saying here.
Does Representative Sobolewski speak for both caucuses when he's calling on President Trump to put a pause on the enforcement action and give the legislature a little time and room to rectify this?
I'll speak on behalf of the Senate Republicans. I think what is happening and the position that this governor has put Maine into is an atrocity over an issue that doesn't make any sense at all to me. This is not, I can't believe that this is the hill the Democrats are dying on, but alas, here we are. The reality is I do think there needs to be some sort of solution here with regard to federal funding. This is not sustainable. We're a poor state. We are heavily reliant on federal money. The governor needs to move on this. It's really that simple. She can do so in a number of different ways. I don't think it requires a statutory reform. However, if that's what she thinks is required, to Representative Sobolewski's point, pass the bill. He's got the bill. It's in the hopper. We ran a bill just today entirely through the chamber. They could hear it today. They could schedule it Thursday. This whole thing could be wrapped up. And instead, I know what's going to happen, unfortunately. My Democrat colleagues are going to drag their heels on this bill like they have every single other bill that deals with this issue and refuse to even schedule it for a public hearing in violation of their own rules, in violation of their own deadlines. These are the deadlines that they've imposed on everybody else to get the work done, and yet when it's an issue like this, they want to hit pause. Whoa, we can't address this so quick. But you can other things. I mean, we ran an entire bill that otherwise would have taken 3 or 4 days through the legislative process today. Because why? There was an emergency. There was a law that was sunsetting and needed to be addressed. What's any different about this situation? We've got 10 days. We could absolutely pass this piece of legislation within 10 days. This problem could be averted. The governor could do the right thing. My colleagues on the left could do the right thing. The onus is now on them to determine which way we're going to go.
So he doesn't speak for the Senate caucus in asking Trump to pause the enforcement action to give...
It is paused for 10 days. What I'm saying is that's not enough. We need to move forward in Maine. The governor needs to take action, and or the legislature needs to take action with her consent. It is paused. The issue is moot for 10 days. Let's go figure it out, and then we'll move on.
When Mr. Sobolewski says women pretending to be men, men pretending to be women, does he speak for the caucus in the kind of rejection of the idea of being transgender?
I mean, I think what the issue here is should a man play girls' sports? Should an 18-year-old man be able to go into a girls' locker room and be around other female children or take medals on the podium from other female athletes? That's what the issue is. If you're an adult, to Representative Sobolewski's point, you have liberties in this country. If that is something you are deciding to do as an adult in your own setting that's not interfering or infringing on anybody else's rights, fine, that's your choice. This has nothing to do with that, and we shouldn't be conflating these issues. We're talking about a very narrow scenario here that is serious, that is detrimental, that is harmful to girls across Maine. both from a developmental standpoint, but also from an academic and an opportunity standpoint with regard to scholarships, the emotional harm that they're forced to then undergo competing against biological males in sports, and then certainly in the scenarios where they are exposed to biological men in an inappropriate and sexual manner. That's what the issue is here. That's what Republicans are focused on fixing. The rest of it, between consenting adults, that's on you.
The bill doesn't go forward from Representative Sobolewski. Would you support the Trump administration still pulling funding from the state if no changes are made to the policies that you're calling for?
Yeah, we have to make a change. We have to make a change.
The loss of federal funding if the Trump administration acts.
There's no reason that we need to lose federal funding.
But if it happens, are Republicans here accepting that that's the consequence?
De-
Democrats in legislation do not change.
Democrats are in complete control of state government. Whatever happens next is entirely on them. We do not support losing federal funding because we would fix the problem. We would have fixed the problem a while ago. We wouldn't have let it got to this point. It's irresponsible that it's been allowed to get to this point. It's a dereliction of their duty that it's gotten to this point. If this doesn't get worked out, it is squarely on their shoulders. This is not an outrageous political position to take. Saying that men shouldn't play girls' sports is not a crazy thing to say. What is crazy, however, is the pushback that our colleagues on the left have given to this entire thing. And it makes me wonder, like, if Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. If he says the sky is blue, they're going to argue with him about it all day long, just because. And it's really unfortunate that this appears to be where we're at in the state of Maine, and the consequences are going to be real. The consequences are going to be dire, and they don't have to be. They don't have to be.
I want to speak to that.
Go ahead.
The Title IX is part of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. When that law was passed in the South, Governor Wallace stood on the steps of the school and said that he was not going to integrate. The federal government came in and said, yes, you will, and they used the full power of the federal government to make sure that they did integrate. I'm not going to stand on the side of Governor Wallace, and I'm not going to stand on the side of Governor Mills when she stands in the way of a civil rights law that was put in to protect women and girls.
I think we'll leave it there for the day, guys. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, George. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bill.